Adobe Acrobat Studio, so brand new. Show me all the things PDFs can do. Do your work with ease and speed. PDF Spaces is all you need. Do hours of research in an instant with key insights from an AI assistant. Pick a template with a click. Now your prezzo looks super slick. Close that deal? Yeah, you won. Do that, doing that, did that, done. Now you can do that with Acrobat. Now you can do that with the all-new Acrobat. It's time to do your best work with the all-new Adobe Acrobat Studio.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. So Netflix is basically Santa this year. 2 NFL games on Christmas Day, streaming live. At 1 p.m. Eastern, it's Cowboys, Commanders. Then at 4:30, you've got Lions, Vikings. Midwest football, playoff stakes, and probably some snow. Watching holiday football is a tradition the whole family can enjoy. Open some gifts, grab some food, settle in, and watch NFL Live on Netflix this Christmas Day.
Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas,
And this is Mick, the Doctor of Digital.
and welcome to Music 101. Music 101 is created to empower to empower music itself and legendary icon in the music industry. Another week, another great episode. Immortalize the characters who lives in our songs.
Yes, popular music has always been popularized by unforgettable characters, some real, some fictional, all immortalized in song. From Johnny B. Good's Guitar Dreams to Eleanor Rigby's Lonely Existence, these names have become cultural touchstones that transcend their original recordings. This exploration examines the memorable characters who live in our favorite songs, the stories behind their creation, and why certain names continue to resonate decades after they first topped the charts.
So let's start with might be the most iconic character name in all the rock and roll history, Mr. Mac. When we think about characters in songs, Johnny B. Good has the near the top of all lists, right?
Absolutely, and for good reason. Johnny B. Good and Chuck Berry from 1958 is more than just a song with a character. It's essentially the creation myth of rock and roll itself. The genius of Berry's storytelling is that he took the classic American dream narrative and filtered it through the lens of a young guitar player. The song tells us about a country boy from Louisiana living near New Orleans who never ever learned to read or write so well, but he could play a guitar just like a ring and a bell. It's important to understand the cultural moment this song emerged from. In 1958, rock and roll was still relatively new, and Berry was crafting what would become the archetype for every aspiring rock guitarist who came after. The character of Johnny B. Good represented possibility, the idea that natural talent and determination could overcome formal education or social barriers. Now, here's where it gets interesting from a biographical standpoint. Berry always maintained that Johnny B. Good was partially autobiographical. His own childhood in St. Louis had elements of that story, though Berry was actually quite well educated and came from a middle-class family. But the deeper inspiration came from someone Berry worked with closely, his pianist, Johnny Johnson. Berry had enormous respect for Johnson's musicianship, and many music historians believe that Johnson's influence on Berry's sound was profound, though he rarely received proper credit during Berry's lifetime. The song itself peaked at number 2 on the Billboard R&B chart and number 8 on the pop chart, which was significant, but its real impact wasn't measured in chart positions, it was measured in influence. The song became a template, a story that every rock guitarist could see themselves in. When you listen to the lyrics, Berry is essentially narrating the future. Maybe someday your name will be in lights saying Johnny B. Good tonight. He was prophesying the rise of rock guitar hero, the stadium tours, the stardom that would define rock music for the next 60 years. The guitar intro alone became one of the most recognizable riffs in music history, and the song has been covered by everyone from Elvis Presley to Jimi Hendrix to the Sex Pistols. It even went into space on the Voyager Golden Record in 1977, representing humanity's musical achievement to any extraterrestrial life that might find it. In conclusion, Johnny B. Good represents the foundational character in rock music storytelling, a figure who embodied aspiration, natural talent, and the transformative power of the guitar. setting the template for countless songs about dreamers and strivers that would follow.
Mr. Meg from Rock Creations or Creation Myth, let's jump forward to the songs that become almost as famous for this speculation around its subject as for music itself. What is the real story behind Michael Jackson's Billie Jean?
Billie Jean is fascinating because it sits at the intersection of autobiography, fiction, and urban legend, and Jackson deliberately kept those lines blurred. Released in January 1983 as the second single from Thriller, the song tells a story that's both specific and universal. A woman claims the narrator is the father of her child, and he insists he's not. The opening line, "She was more like a beauty queen than a movie scene from a movie scene," immediately establishes a cinematic quality, and the entire song maintains this narrative tension between attraction and danger, desire and denial. Now, Jackson was always clear about one thing. Billie Jean was not a real person. The name was fictional, but the experiences that inspired the song were very real. By the early 1980s, Jackson was already dealing with interests and intense fan obsession. He'd received numerous letters from women claiming he'd fathered their children despite never having met them. Some fans would show up at his family home in Encino. The psychological weight of that kind of attention, the invasion, the false accusations, the inability to trust people's motives, all of that fed into Billie Jean. What makes the song so effective is how Jackson universalized a very specific kind of celebrity paranoia into something anyone could relate to. The fear of being trapped, of someone making claims about you that aren't true, of your reputation being at stake. These are anxieties that resonate far beyond the specific scenario of paternity fraud. Quincy Jones, who produced Thriller, initially wanted to title this song Not My Lover because he worried that people would confuse it with the tennis player Billie Jean King. Jackson fought to keep the title because he understood the name had power. It was memorable. It was conversational. It humanized the antagonist of the story. Musically, the song is a masterclass in building tension. That iconic bass line, created by Louis Johnson, is one of the most recognizable in pop music history. The drum pattern, the synth strings, Jackson's vocal delivery, everything contributes to a sense of paranoia and unease. And then there's Jackson's performance of it on the Motown 25 television special in March 1983 when he debuted the Moonwalk. That performance transformed Billie Jean from a hit song into a cultural phenomenon. The song spent 7 weeks at #1 at the Billboard Hot 100 and top charts worldwide. It won 2 Grammy Awards and became one of the best-selling singles of all time. But beyond the commercial success, Billie Jean demonstrated how a character in a song didn't need to be real to feel real. Jackson created someone so vivid in our imaginations that people still debate her identity, despite Jackson repeatedly saying she was fictional. That's the power of great character-driven songwriting. In conclusion, Billie Jean shows us how fictional characters in songs can embody real emotional truths, and how a memorable name can become shorthand for complex feelings of paranoia, desire, and the darker side of fame.
Those first two are relatively mainstream examples, Mr. Meg, but excuse me, but some songwriters have drawn much darker, more literary sources. Tom Waits comes to mind immediately.
Tom Waits is the perfect example of a songwriter who treats character creation like a novelist or playwright. His 2002 song, Poor Edward, from the album Alice, is a brilliant example of how he mines obscure historical legends and medical curiosities for material. The song tells the story of Edward Morday, a fixture from 19th century medical folklore who supposedly had a second face on the back of his head, a face that couldn't speak but would allegedly whisper terrible things to him at night, eventually driving him to suicide at age 23. Now, it's important to note that Edward Mordake's existence is disputed. He appears in an 1895 article in the Boston Sunday Post describing various medical anomalies, but there's no reliable historical documentation that he actually existed. He's likely a piece of Victorian-era medical fiction, a kind of sensationalized story that newspapers loved to print. But for Waits, historical accuracy isn't the point. Emotional and atmospheric truth is what matters. Waits's version of the story turns Mordake into a tragic figure, cursed with a companion he can't escape, tormented by a voice he can't silence. The instrumentation is sparse and haunting, mainly pump organ, percussion, and Waits's distinctive growl of a voice, which he modulates to create different characters within the song. It's theatrical in the best sense, creating a complete emotional world in just a few minutes. Poor Edward was part of a larger theatrical project. Alice was originally composed as a musical score for a Robert Wilson stage production based loosely on Lewis Carroll's relationship with Alice Liddell. Waits released it as an album alongside Blonde Money, which was scored for a production of George Borcher's play, Wartsap. Both albums feature characters who are damaged, desperate, grotesque, and deeply human, the kind of figures that popularize the margins of society and history. What's remarkable about Waits's approach to character is that he doesn't sentimentalize or judge. Poor Edward isn't a monster or a curiosity. He's suffering persons trapped in an impossible situation. Waits finds the humanity in the grotesque, the dignity in the damage. This is consistent throughout his work, whether he's singing about alcoholics and drifters of small change or the carnival characters of the Black Rider. What Poor Richard, Waits demonstrates that characters in songs don't need to be famous or even real. They just need to be vivid and emotionally resonant. The song hasn't been a commercial hit in any traditional sense, but it's beloved by Waits's devoted fan base precisely because it showcases his commitment to storytelling that's both darkly beautiful and beautifully dark. In conclusion, Tom Waits's Poor Edward illustrates how songwriters can draw from literary and historical sources to create characters that explore the themes of isolation, suffering, and the human condition in ways that mainstream pop rarely attempts.
Mr. Mick, speaking of characters from legend and history, Nick Cave took on one of America's most enduring folk tales. What did he do with Stagger Lee?
Nick Cave's 1996 version of Stagger Lee is one of the most audacious character interpretations in modern rock music. The song appears on the album Murder Ballads, and he takes on an already violent folktale and amplifies everything: the profanity, the brutality, the sexual content, the dark humor, to create something that's part historical retelling, part postmodern deconstruction, and part pure provocation. The story of Stagger Lee goes back to Christmas night, 1895, in St. Louis, when a man named Lee Shelton shot and killed William Lyons in a bar fight, reportedly over a Stetson hat. Shelton was a carriage driver and part-time pimp known as Stag Lee, and the murder became the basis for one of the most enduring narratives in American folk music. Over the decades, the story was told and retold in countless versions: blues, folk, R&B, rock, each adapting it to a different cultural moments and musical styles. Lloyd Price had a #1 hit with Stagger Lee in 1959, but that version was sanitized for mainstream radio, turning the murder into a vague confrontation over gambling. By contrast, earlier blues versions by artists like Mississippi John Hurt and Ferry Lewis maintain more of the story's violence and moral ambiguity. Nick Cave, working with the Bad Seeds, decided to strip away any pretense of civility or redemption. His Stagger Lee is almost mythological figure of pure malevolence. He doesn't just kill Billy Lyons, he humiliates him, sexually assaults his girlfriend, and seems to delight in cruelty for its own sake. Caves' vocal performance is theatrical and menacing, and the music, driven by a sinister organ and steady rhythm, creates an atmosphere of inevitable doom. What Cave is doing here is exploring the way folk tales evolve and what happens when you push a legend to its extreme. Stagger Lee, in various versions, has been portrayed as the cool anti-hero, a victim of circumstances, a symbol of resistance against oppression, and a cautionary tale about violence. Caves' version rejects any romanticization. His Stagger Lee is terrifying precisely because he's given no redeeming qualities, no explanation for his actions beyond pure malice. It's Cave's way of interrogating how we turn killers into legends and why we're fascinated by violent characters in the first place. The song was controversial, as you'd expect. It's profane and violent enough that it rarely gets radio play, even on alternative stations. But within the context of Murder Ballads, an album that also includes Where the Wild Roses Grow with Kylie Minogue and covers of traditional murder ballads, it works as part of Cave's broader exploration of how music has always been drawn to dark narratives and violent characters. Cave himself has talked about being interested in the malleability of folk tales, how they change with each retelling, and how that process reveals something about the culture doing the retelling. His Stagger Lee is simultaneously a faithful continuation of that folk tradition and a radical departure from it. In conclusion, Nick Cave's Stagger Lee demonstrates how traditional folk characters can be reinterpreted and pushed to extremes, forcing us to confront why violent anti-heroes have always held such fascination in American music and storytelling.
Mr. Meg, let's shift gear from these dark characters to something more tender. There's a whole category of songs about real people the songwriter mad or pin for. What's the story with Hey There, Delilah?
Hey There, Delilah is one of those songs that proves you don't need a relationship to write a great love song. Sometimes you just need a moment, an idea, and a whole lot of romantic imagination. The Plain White T's released this acoustic ballad in 2006, though it was first included on their 2005 album, All That We Needed. The song didn't immediately take off, but when it was re-released in 2007, it became a phenomenon, eventually reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earning Grammy nominations for Song of the Year and Best Pop Performance by a Duo or a Group. The real Delilah is Delilah DiCrescenzo, who was a competitive steeplechase runner at Columbia University when she met Tom Higginson, the Plain White T's lead singer, at a party in 2002. Higginson was immediately smitten, but the woman here, Delilah, was in a relationship and made it clear she wasn't interested romantically. They met literally just that once, but Higginson was so taken with her that he told her he was going to write a song about her. She thought he was joking, the kind of thing musicians probably say at parties all the time, except he actually did it. The song imagines a long-distance relationship between New York and Los Angeles, with the narrator promising that someday they'll have it all. What makes the song work is its complete sincerity. There's no irony, no knowing winks at the camera, just straightforward romantic longing delivered over a simple acoustic guitar arrangement. In an era when indie rock often prided itself on emotional detachment and clever wordplay, Hey There, Delilah was almost radically earnest. The production is stripped down to almost nothing, primarily Higginson's voice and guitar, with subtle string arrangements added later. This simplicity became the song's strength. It felt intimate, like overhearing someone's private thoughts, and that intimacy resonated with millions of listeners who connected with the feeling of longing for someone who seems just out of touch. Now here's where the real-life story gets interesting. When the song became a massive hit, DiCrescenzo found herself in an awkward position. She never dated Higginson, never encouraged his attention beyond basic friendliness, and suddenly there was this hugely popular song with her name in it that millions of people assumed was about a real relationship. She handled it with grace, acknowledging that while flattering, the song was based more on Higginson's fantasy than any real connection between them. She remained focused on her athletic career and later worked in various professional capacities, generally declining to capitalize on her unexpected musical fame. The song's success is remarkable when you consider how simple it is. There are no dramatic production flourishes, no complex arrangements, no attempt to sound like anything else on the radio at that time. It's just a well-crafted song with a memorable melody and a name that sticks in your head. The conversational quality of the lyrics, starting with, Hey there, Delilah, what's it like in New York City, makes listeners feel like they're part of an intimate moment. Hey There, Delilah demonstrates something important about characters in songs. They don't have to be accurately portrayed to be effective. Higginson created a version of Delilah that existed almost entirely in his imagination, built from a brief encounter in his own romantic ideals. That fictional Delilah became real for millions of listeners, even though she bore little resemblance to the actual person. It's a reminder that characters in songs have always been constructions, even when they're based on real people. In conclusion, Hey There, Delilah shows how a single encounter can inspire a complete fictional relationship and how the most effective love songs often say more about the writer's yearning than about the actual person being written about.
Mr. Mick, sticking with the real people inspiring songs, we should talk about Dolly Parton's Jolene. That's one of the most covered songs in the country's music, isn't it?
Jolene is not just one of the most covered songs in country music, it's one of the most covered songs, period, with versions by everyone from Olivia Newton-John to the White Stripes to Miley Cyrus. Dolly Parton wrote and recorded it in 1973, and it became her second solo number one hit on the country charts. The song was released as part of an album also called Jolene, and both the single and album were massive successes, helping establish Dolly as not just a performer, but a serious songwriter. The story behind the song combines two different inspirations. The name Jolene came from a young fan, a little girl with red hair who asked for Dolly's autograph after a show. Dolly was struck by how beautiful and unusual the name was and knew immediately she wanted to use it in a song. The emotional content of the song, the jealous pleading with a beautiful woman not to steal her man, came from a different source. Early in her marriage to Carl Dean, Dolly noticed a bank teller was flirting heavily with her husband. The experience of watching another woman show interest in her partner, combined with her own insecurities at the time, became the emotional core of the song. What makes Jolene so powerful is its vulnerability. The narrator isn't angry or confrontational. She's pleading, almost begging. I'm begging of you, please don't take my man, Jolene. There's an acknowledgement that this other woman has all the power, all the beauty, and the narrator can only appeal to her mercy. That's a devastating emotional position, and Dolly delivers it with a combination of strength and fragility that's heartbreaking. Musically, the song is deceptively simple. It's built on a straightforward chord progression with a slightly ominous minor key feel, and Dolly's vocal melody is instantly memorable. The tempo is quick, not the slow ballad you might expect for such an emotionally heavy subject, which gives the song a sense of urgency and anxiety. The way Dolly sings Jolene as a four-syllable word, Jo-O-O-Lean, has become iconic, instantly recognizable even to people who couldn't name the song. The song's influence on popular culture has been enormous. The character of Jolene has been archetypal, the beautiful other woman, the threat to domestic security, the figure of almost mythological attractiveness. People reference Jolene in conversation, in memes, and in other songs. The White Stripes' raw garage rock version of 2000 introduced the song to a new generation and demonstrated its adaptability across genres. In 2023, Beyoncé referenced the Jolene story in her country-influenced work, showing how Dolly's character continues to resonate decades later. Dolly herself has talked about how Jolene has taken on a life of its own. She's joked about how people approach her at shows requesting the song, and how some fans have told her they named their daughters Jolene despite the song being about a romantic threat. The song has transcended its original context to just mean a strong, memorable female character. What's fascinating is that Dolly created Jolene almost entirely from her imagination. There wasn't really a specific person threatening her marriage. It was an emotional fear given a name and a face. The bank teller's flirtation was minor, and Dolly and Carl have been married for over 57 years now. But by giving that fear a specific character, Dolly created something universal. Everyone who's ever felt jealous or insecure in a relationship can relate to Jolene. In conclusion, Jolene demonstrates how a perfectly chosen name combined with a deeply relatable emotions can create a character so vivid and universal that she becomes part of our cultural vocabulary, transcending the specific circumstances that inspired her creation.
Yes, indeed. Jolene. Jolene. One of the famous songs of Dolly Parton. So, Mr. Mick, let's wrap up this episode about the theme of real people inspiring famous love songs. The Police, Roxanne has such a distinctive story behind it.
Roxanne is fascinating because it takes a very specific scenario, a man falling for a sex worker, and turns it into something urgent and almost desperate. The Police released it in 1978 as their debut single from the album Outlandish de Amor, though it didn't become a major hit until it was re-released in 1979 after the success of their second album. Eventually, it reached number 12 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100, but its cultural impact far exceeded its chart position. Sting wrote the song after Police visited Paris in October 1977 to play at a club. They were staying in a cheap hotel near the Pigalle district, which is historically Paris's red light district. Walking through those streets, Sting saw the prostitutes on the windows and doorways, and something about the scene sparked his imagination. He'd also been reading the play Cyrano de Bergerac by Edmond Rostand, which is about a man who hopelessly in love with a woman he can never have due to his own insecurities. The new influences of both of them, the reality of the Pigalle and the romantic tragedy of Cyrano, merged into Roxanne. The song is essentially a plea from a man who's fallen for a sex worker, begging her to stop her profession. It's complicated emotionally. There's genuine affection mixed with possessiveness, rescue fantasy mixed with romantic idealism. Sting's vocal delivery shifts between tender and almost aggressive, reflecting that internal conflict. Musically, Roxanne was revolutionary for the Police. It has a reggae-influenced rhythm, which was unusual for British rock at that time, though it would become a signature of the Police's sound. The iconic opening piano has a backstory too. There's a slightly dissonant crash early in the recording that happened because Sting accidentally sat on the piano keyboard in the studio. They kept it in the final version because it added an organic, slightly chaotic feel that matched the emotional turbulence of the song. The bass line, played by Sting himself, drives the entire track, while Stuart Copeland's hi-hat work gives it that distinctive, urgent pulse. What's interesting about the character of Roxanne is that she never speaks in the song. We only hear the narrator's perspective, his demands and pleas. Roxanne exists entirely through his projection. We don't know what she wants, what she thinks, or whether she has any interest in this man who's decided to save her. This actually makes the song more complex than it might appear. Is this romantic love or is it obsession? Is the narrator genuinely concerned for Roxanne or is he trying to control her? The song doesn't answer those questions, and that ambiguity has kept it interesting for decades. The name Roxanne itself has a theatrical, slightly exotic quality that fits the song's dramatic tone. It's possible Sting was thinking of the character Roxanne from Cyrano de Bergerac, the beautiful woman whom Cyrano loves from afar. That literary connection adds another layer to the song. Just as Cyrano wrote beautiful letters on behalf of another man, this narrator is trying to reach Roxanne across the divide of their different worlds. Roxanne has been covered extensively, with versions by artists as diverse as George Michael, Eddie Murphy in the film 48 Hours, and even a tango-influenced version by Moulin Rouge for their soundtrack. And with this, each version emphasizes different aspects. Some focus on the tenderness, others on the desperation, still others on the implicit darkness of the situation. In 2019, Arizona Zervas had a massive hit with a song also called Roxanne, though it had borne no resemblance to the Police's version. The fact that the name alone was enough to title a completely different song speaks to how thoroughly the Police's Roxanne entered popular consciousness. For the Police, Roxanne was their breakthrough. It established them as serious artists with something distinctive to offer, and it introduced Sting as a songwriter willing to tackle complex emotional and social territory. The song helped define the band's sound and approach, setting the stage for their evolution into one of the biggest acts of the early 1980s. Roxanne illustrates how a character can be simultaneously vivid and mysterious, existing entirely through another person's perception, and how that ambiguity can make a song more emotionally complex and enduringly fascinating than a mere straightforward narrative would allow. Hope you enjoyed the beginning look at characters in song. Conclusion, this initial look at songs and character names is just the beginning. There's much more to be said, and we hope you look forward to the next episode in the series. Until next time.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Meg. Thank you, thank you. Immortalize the characters who live in our songs explores how music gives eternal life to the people, lovers, rebels, dreamers, and heartbreakers who inhabit our favorite lyrics. Through the melody and story, these characters become more than words. They become reflection of our experiences, memories, and emotions. Mr. Mink, would you like to plug in something?
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. Write the book, grow the business. Connect with me on LinkedIn, GMIC, the Doctor of Digital Smith, PhD. Also pick up a couple of volumes I have on Amazon, Burning America and On Track Ian Hunter. And if you're an artist, make sure you check out True Fans to grow your musical career. Till next time, thank you for listening.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Mink, the Doctor Digital, and please do listen to our baby podcast, Mental Health 101. Mental Health 101 is created to empower our mental health awareness. So, Mr. Mink, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Until next time, Deus Vult.
Welcome, people. See you soon.